Yeah, exactly.
I did not know Natalie Arroyo was in Humble Roller Derby. I'm gonna have to get her back on and say,
She's
hey,
probably
we
our
didn't
most
talk about
famous.
this.
Yeah,
Our most famous player.
Our
Her
most
name
famous
is
skater.
Braun-Luc Picard.
That's good for branding,
If
though,
you're,
to get your guys'
Yeah.
the brand out there. Say,
Oh, totally.
hey, she's sitting on the board of supervisors. She's
Supervisor
one of
Arroyo.
us.
Use your platform to pitch Derby to everyone.
Yes. And how long have you been with the HRD?
I started in 2018.
Okay, so you guys kind of started around the same time.
We were in the same
About the
boot
same
camp together. One of them.
One of them,
Yeah.
yeah. And I joined the team fall of 2019. I think I was right behind
I did too.
you.
No, I think we passed up at the same
really?
time.
Okay.
Fall of 2019.
I did then break my arm.
Right.
That'll
And
put you
then
out.
Yeah.
So I was out for a couple months. Yeah.
What is a roller derby boot camp? Is that kind of just a dry run of what you can expect?
It's actual training.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
training
You
camp.
learn
That's what we're supposed to call it.
Training
Training
camp.
camp.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Boot camp's a little more intense.
We
It's-
want it to sound approachable, and it is.
Yeah. I mean, the first one, they call it L1, level 1, and you learn how to skate. And then level 2, you learn how to hit and how to start playing derby. And then level 3, you join the team.
Mm-hmm.
So
And
you
there's
guys get 'em-
16-week courses. So
16 weeks.
yeah, so you'll L1 is 16 weeks, and then the following, they're kind of on a semester basis. So like spring will be a boot camp, and then fall will be a boot camp.
Mm-hmm.
So you guys just get them skating and then say, now let's throw some physical violence in there. Let's start knocking people off skates.
They do have to be stable, so you have to pass up. We call it passing up. So some people do L1 multiple times, especially if they don't have any skating experience, because you have to be able to stand up confidently, stop, turn. And yeah, then most people are kind of excited to start physical contact.
And no one's throwing like wild hits in L2.
Okay.
It's just a little, bumping going on, I think.
Yeah.
What's the breakdown? Is it 4 weeks between L1 and L2? Can you just stay in L1 for the full 16 weeks or?
Yeah, I think that's usually how it goes. Like you start in L1, then you have to do sort of an evaluation at the end of the 16 weeks to determine if you're ready to move on to L2. And there's either a summer or a winter break sort of in between those camps.
Oh, so it's not all in one session that you're passing through all 3 levels. Okay.
So it takes, if you're doing things the right way, I guess, and it could take up to a year to be at the point where you're ready to join L3, which is the team. But some people come as transfers. Some people come with a lot of skating experience. We have a lot of park skaters who are basically ready to start doing derby stuff and go right into L2. So it's not necessarily a linear journey. There's lots of different ways to get started.
Yeah, park skater, they're almost ready to go. You just have to teach them how to hit, I would imagine, and then they can kind of...
Yeah, and like the game of derby also, because there's a lot of rules.
Break that down to me for someone who is not familiar with roller derby at all.
Okay, I'll try. So what it is, there are 5 players from each team out on the track at the same time. And they're both playing offense, they're both playing defense at the same time. There's one player from each team who has a star on their helmet, and that player is able to score points. And so if you can imagine the person with the star, they're called the jammer, and they are trying to get past the other team's pack. The other team's pack is trying to block them. They're trying to stop them. So there are 4 people trying to stop that person. But at the same time, the jammer from the other team is trying to get past the other pack. And people from the pack can switch to offense. So if you're in the pack, you're trying to stop one jammer, and at the same time, you're trying to help your jammer get past the other team. As soon as the jammer gets past the opposite team's pack, then they're now eligible to score. They skate around the track, and as they start passing those players again, each one is a point. So that's how you score points. So instead of having a ball, you literally have a skater who's out there trying to get past the other skaters. And what makes it confusing, that probably sounds confusing, but what makes it even more confusing is there's a lot of rules around, how you can hit. You can't just punch each other. So there's hitting zones that you can hit. The direction you have to go. So you're generally going in what's called derby direction, which is
it's
counterclockwise. Yeah. And did you have anything else about how the game's played?
Yeah, there's like an engagement zone. You can't just throw a hit across the track. You have to be within a certain amount of feet to other players. yeah, as Clover said, there's a lot of rules about where you can hit people on their body and where you can hit them on the track. We get called on penalties. There's officials watching, so you could get sent to the penalty box, which leaves your team down a skater. Yeah, it's a complicated game.
There's a lot of moving pieces in that.
Yeah, literally.
And the officials, there are a lot of officials. So each jammer has an official watching them, and then each pack has an official watching them. And those are just the officials on the inside of the track. And then there are officials standing on the outside of the track, making sure you don't skate out. So if you go outside the boundaries of the track and then you try and go right back in, it's called cutting the track, and you'll get a penalty. Mm-hmm. And all the penalties, I think it's 30 seconds in the penalty box. Mm-hmm. And so that is like if you hit someone with your forearm, or you trip them, or you cut the track, those are all 30 seconds in the penalty box. But,
so I was sorry to interrupt. I was envisioning a track almost like NASCAR, but you can go on and off the track. So is it shortened in terms of what you can skate?
Flat track derby, which it basically means you need like a large space. I don't know what the exact dimensions of our track are, but it's taped off into an oval shape. So you can physically leave the track quite easily, but if you cross those boundaries, then you have cut the track and you must re-enter the track legally. So it's not like the traditional 1970s bank track derby where if you leave the bank track you're flying off of a raised platform. It's not like that anymore. The game has slowed down quite a bit and it's gotten a lot more strategic. So we're not necessarily just flying around at top speed, knocking each other off a bank track. There's a lot of strategy. We have assigned positions, whether as a jammer, there's usually 3 blockers and a pivot. So there's different positions as well.
Yeah, and the reason it slowed down is because it looks a lot more like a scrum in rugby or something like that. Like the jammers are literally running into a wall. Usually it's called a tripod, 3 skaters on the other team that are bracing each other. And you see them just kind of fighting for a while. And so instead of like trying to go super fast, really a lot of the strategy is about, I'm a jammer. From my perspective, it's about like, how do you get past these 3 people trying to stop you? And
I'm a blocker, yeah. And so from my perspective, it's like, how do we stop that jammer and save our points? Or help our jammer.
When you were saying out of bounds, that's what I was envisioning, was somebody flying into the stands. I was like,
okay, people
that's
do
a
go
little
flying.
more intense.
That does happen occasionally.
But it's a lot less like, I think the old style was kind of almost like wrestling or something.
Like WWE wrestling.
Yeah.
I think that people could kind of do like, what do they call that? Clothesline,
Yeah.
Just catch
it's very
somebody.
theatrical. We are trying to like legitimize our sport. And it's played in a very serious way, I think.
Although we still have, we have silly names.
We do have
Some
silly
of us
names.
wear silly like makeup and stuff, but so we're still theatrical, but it's a real sport in terms of how we play it.
Is that part of the idea to slow it down, is to make it a little more technical and maybe not necessarily add credibility to it, but make people realize, oh yeah, this is a real thing and it is technical?
I don't know if that's why the switch happened from bank track. I think the switch was really just practical. Like people couldn't afford to house these enormous bank tracks. But it's really easy to set up tape in a flat concrete circle. So I think that's why that happened. And I think just the natural development of the sport was like, because you're not flying around this bank track, it slows down. And like, how do you do that to the best of your ability? Well, we're going to now play in tripods. We're going to now have strategies about what we do off the line, things like that.
Yeah, what I've heard is that when people started to figure out, that it's not just about racing around the track, that you're trying to not let the other team score points. And so the whole bracing strategy really started being this huge thing where there's 3 people and they're in a triangle and they're bracing each other. And the jammer now has this triangle they're trying to get past. And that, I think, slowed it down a ton. Because now you have one person who's able to stand backwards and is literally just stopping that wall of people, And so it just slowed down because people they're not racing, they're actually kind of fighting.
Yeah, it would be kind of terrifying riding towards a group of 3 people who want to knock you down.
Oh, I'm
Like,
sure
okay,
it's
I
it's
Yeah.
very scary.
It is scary. I mean, I dislocated my finger not too long ago doing that, and you know, people don't. I don't think that the injury rate is super high. I've heard people kind of like exaggerate how much people in derby get injured. It's a sport, so people get injured, but
And it's a contact sport.
contact sport. But really, you know, we practice a lot, and so we try not to. Obviously, we try not to get injured, but it is scary because you are trying to hit each other, you know, and even though you're best of friends and everybody spends a lot of time together, when it all comes down to it, when you're out on the track, you are trying to hit the people as hard as you can often or get around them. But my strategy as a jammer is often to try and hit.
She hits hard too. She's very strong.
Is
and
that just
fast.
because it's easier to get through them if you just plow through them as opposed to try to wait for an opening?
I think it's because some jammers are really good at, like, very nimble and very quick on their toes. They'll stand up on their toe stops on the skates and they'll kind of dance. And I'm just not that good at that. And so I've learned that I'm strong and I'm like, okay, I'll just kind of try and run through people. And, you know, it's whatever works. So we have a jammer named Trey who is really an incredible, like, juker, like, just on their toes all the time. And it works.
There's some great skaters on our team too, just like technically very good skaters, roller skaters.
Well, it's probably an interesting combination you have to find between skating ability and not being afraid to hit and take a hit.
Oh yeah, I think the people who are not afraid to hit and take a hit end up on the team, and those who just want to roller skate don't want to stick it out for that.
What are we talking about in terms of actual contact? I know you said there are some different rules on where you can hit and where you can hit on the track.
Yeah, so with the engagement zone, is that what we call? Oh, target zone on your body is like basically anywhere from the chest to the hips, and the upper arms and the thighs. If you're facing the opposite of derby direction, all that is fair game. So if we're all playing in a counterclockwise direction, but I'm turned around facing backwards, I can just get blown up. This is all fair game, right? However, if somebody's hitting me from behind in derby direction, they can't hit me square in the spine. It's upper arms, shoulders, right and left of the spine,
So
and
the two
hips.
sides.
Yeah, the sides.
So you just can't hit somebody right in the middle of the back.
Yeah.
And then you can't, basically you
nothing
can't
with
hit
your
their
head.
face.
Or their legs.
Yeah.
You can't just like kick somebody's legs out of them. You
Just wash them out.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a lot of it when you're seeing people play derby is one person going in and they're hitting a lot with their shoulder and their hips into the other person's body, like shoulder, hips. And yeah, if somebody's facing you, you can hit anywhere. So they'll hit the stomach or chest or whatever. And so it looks a little bit more like, it's a little bit like tackling maybe, except you never lead with your head. So yeah.
So you could actually go almost like Superman style and take them out as long as you're hitting one of those points of contact? Or
I'm not sure
everybody's
what you
staying on
mean
their
by
feet?
that.
She would like
can't
dive.
you can't
No,
because
you
you
can't
can't hit with this.
Okay.
So Chowder mentioned like where you can hit other people, and also as you're hitting someone, you can only use certain parts of your body. The big one is you can't use your forearms, and you'll hear there's a lot of forearm penalties. That's what I get the most often because you want to do this.
It's like
That would just be-
instinctual to like
yeah.
protect
Yeah.
your body, but
And-
you can't.
but you can do this.
That's
and
true.
Hit.
It has to be connected to your body though. You can't.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
when you're hitting someone, you can only hit with your shoulder down to your knees, basically, but you can't like do this.
And it's often very low and in sort of sweeping motion. So there's a lot of, pushing off the track like that with the hips or the shoulder.
With the goal being to knock the person off balance, right?
Yes.
Is that
Yeah.
kind of the point?
Yeah.
Is you want to get them to the ground because then
You don't
Totally.
necessarily need to get them to the ground. You just need to get them out of your way or your jammer's way
so they can pass.
so they can pass. Yes,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people who will hit to kind of try and knock people also out of bounds
Off the track.
off the track, right? And that's a strategy also, but as Chowder's saying, like really a lot of the hitting is just get them off balance long enough so that the jammer can get by. And so it's all about the jammers on each side. Chowder also mentioned that there's a pivot. So the other person who has something on their helmet, it's a stripe. And the pivot is the only person who can actually take the star from the jammer and become the jammer during gameplay. So the pivot is out there. That's why they're called the pivot. They can pivot from
Blocker to jammer.
playing in the pack. And then if their jammer is stuck, then the jammer can take the star off their head and hand it to the pivot.
I'm not even sure if we
They-
mentioned the helmet covers at first. The jammer always wears a star helmet cover.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
said the star.
Oh, did we say that?
But I
Okay,
didn't
good.
know about the pivot.
Yeah, the pivot
Yeah.
can become the jammer.
Right.
Mhm.
And it's the only person who can become the jammer. And so then all the packs are now looking at that new jammer. They become the jammer, and now they're all trying to stop the jammer, the new person.
Mm-hmm. And that pass
So-
can happen very strategically also.
Yeah, like the jammer could take off their star and like kind of hide it and pretend to give it to the pivot, and the pivot like pretends that they have it or whatever it is. You know,
Mhm.
they don't
Psych
have
out the
to
other
pass.
team.
But yeah, that's most of the basic rules.
Can you skate backwards? I know you said you can be turned around. So you can actually go, if you're going counterclockwise, that's the derby direction. You
Yep.
can skate clockwise and start trying to take people
You
out.
can't skate
No.
clockwise, but
You
you
can't.
can skate backwards counterclockwise, which often happens
Okay, so you
because
can
you're
be
trying to
faced that way.
visualize what's on the track behind you. So
Yeah, you can't skate clockwise except in certain situations. So
like you can do it, you just can't make contact.
yeah,
And you can't break the
exactly.
pack.
Yeah, it gets a little complicated with the packs, but one example might be, let's say that Chowder goes and knocks someone out really hard, and they get out, and Chowder stays inbounds. Chowder can actually run clockwise backwards, and that person has to go in behind Chowder, and
because we have to keep superior position.
yeah, and so that would be a situation where Chowder's like running them back. That's what it's called. And that can happen, but it's really rare to ever skate clockwise. And in fact, in practice, we call it skating in opposite direction. If we just try skating in opposite direction, because we're so unused to it, and like one side of your body develops muscles differently from the other side, and so you get a little imbalanced. But
So the skating does happen, but it's rare, and you can't make contact. Like if you need to rejoin your teammates and they're down the track from you in the clockwise direction, you can go back to them, and you won't be penalized unless you all are a certain distance from the rest of the pack.
yeah, and probably that's the most confusing thing for people who are watching Derby is that the two packs actually have to stay within a certain
The 5 and
distance of
5.
each other.
Oh, okay.
So the jammers, they can go wherever they want because they're going to try and get past the packs and then go around and loop, past them again. But the two packs actually have to stay within a certain distance of each other. So it kind of forms this cluster of skaters in one part, and that's where the gameplay is happening. That's the engagement zone. And so two of the officials are just standing there making sure that the packs basically are formed right. And that can seem confusing, I think, even to us, because you'll start playing and you'll get really into it, and then suddenly you do something to break the packs apart, to destroy the pack, and then you get a penalty, and it's just because you skated too far away from where the engagement zone is. So that actually, when you were talking about slowing it down, that probably slows it down the most. There are all these rules that force people to be together, and that means that you're forced to kind of be in this cluster.
And I don't totally know that this is true, but I feel like the reasoning for that is that you can't just skate away from the jammer to avoid getting your points taken. And the two packs together enforce that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Is that a thing? Did I just make that up? I don't know. I'm not a coach.
And so when we're talking about the engagement zone here, that's just the area between the two packs.
Including the packs as
Including
well.
the packs.
Yeah. And then there's a certain amount of feet in front of and behind the pack that it is also in the engagement zone.
So how far can they actually be apart from each other before you
10
would get
feet.
flagged? Hey, that's not very far.
It's not very far. But I mean, that's the nearest people to each other. So
So you could have that pretty
you can be
spread
you can
out.
be spread out. And
We're really getting into the weeds
I
here,
know.
the nitty gritty. We're like, let's see how good we know our rules.
one thing is people from the other, let's say that Chowder's in a black pack, so they're all wearing black shirts, and they're trying to stop the white jammer, but her jammer is up, her black jammer is up against the white pack, she can actually go to the other pack and start hitting them to help her jammer. And maybe a couple people could go up and hit that other pack. So it's not like the packs are like just one color or one team. They start to mix a lot. And that's a huge part of it is you're playing offense. You can go over, try and hit the other pack, get your jammer through, and then you go back and you play defense and try and stop the other jammer. And you're constantly switching like that.
It happens really fast.
And it happens fast, and especially really good players, they'll kind of see a moment and they'll be like, okay, I'll go help my jammer. And they'll just go and hit a couple players and then go back and play defense. And that's a huge part of it.
So we were talking about the scrum there in rugby for a second, and I'm envisioning that's kind of the defensive goal of the pack is to almost form a barrier between your jammer and the other team who's trying to get to them.
It's kind of that, and your barrier is also like when the jammer passes your hips, that's your point, that they've taken your point. So if you form a barrier and they can't get past your hips, then they can't get any points on you.
I think if I understood you, though, also the barrier is against the other team's jammer.
Okay.
Yeah. And so usually if you're playing offense, like if you're helping your jammer, you're actually going and trying to break the barrier of the other team. So they're standing in a tripod and you're like trying to take them out so that your jammer can get past them. So the barrier is really against the other team's jammer. You're just trying to stop them wherever they are.
For folks who are like having a hard time envisioning what this looks like, our governing body, which is Women's Flat Track Derby Association, WFDA, has a great like 1 minute intro video on YouTube about like what derby is and how it's played, and it explains everything very
I will link
well.
to that in the video so people can watch it.
Super helpful.
Yeah,
because I think describing it is really hard.
You really have to see it, I think, to kind of understand what derby looks like.
Yeah, I've seen a couple videos of actual play, but it wasn't explained, and so I'm just watching this scene unfold, thinking, "What is going? What's happening?"
I think that's
here?
a lot of our audience.
Yeah.
We're just like, what?
Yeah, and at our games, which our next game is September 30th at 6 p.m. But at our games, it's there are rule books that we hand out, like a little program. There's an announcer who's
explaining what's happening on the track as it goes down.
Talking the whole time, and this time it's going to be a former skater. There's a scoreboard, so you can at least see like what the score is and get a sense of who's doing better. So that there are things that'll kind of like clue you into what's happening.
The way to like watch derby, I think, when you start to be introduced to the sport is to follow the jammer. I mean, that's the point scorer, so that's the best way to start watching derby. You're not necessarily watching for who's doing offense and defense. You're kind of watching the progress of the jammer around the track. So that's a good way to start. See the star, see if they make points, et cetera, et cetera.
The star.
Yeah, follow the
Just keep
star.
your eyes there.
Follow the star.
How did you two get introduced to this? Why roller derby?
I can start.
Yeah.
Oh, one of my best friends is a longtime vet skater, and I came to watch her play, and I was just so enthralled with the whole identity, I think, that sort of we associate with roller derby skaters. I mean, not just the sport, which is awesome and fun, and I love it. But I think there was something about, this group of humans who are out here hitting each other. There is sort of this long kind of romanticized history of like what roller derby is that I was also really interested in. And I just wanted to give it a try. And I started the training camp, and I was like, this is it. This is for me. It was a great way to make friends. Really test your limits physically and mentally.
Yeah. I was similar in that I had a friend who was doing it, and I had avoided derby, I would say, in some ways. Just I knew that it was there, and I had always played a lot of sports, but I thought of it as kind of more theatrical than it was, and I went and saw it, and I was really impressed with the athleticism, and I thought that it was something that I could do, I mean, that you can train to do. And I signed up for training camp, I think the next day after I went to the first game that I saw. So it was pretty much immediate. And then when you go to training camp, you really quickly realize how hard it is. And so it's like this challenge. It's something where every time you show up, you get better at it. And I started training camp, I was 41, And so it's really rare to show up to something when you're in your 40s and to get better at it as opposed to get worse, which is what, I played soccer and I was like, I'm getting slower and slower. And then here's something where it's like, no, you're going to get better pretty much every time you show up. And it's been, so we have players who go from, I think 18 is maybe the
18
youngest.
18 to like 45. It's a huge age range, or more.
Yeah,
More. Oh, okay, more.
That's a pretty broad range.
It is.
Yeah.
And it takes all kinds, all body types, all heights.
Yeah.
It's a really inclusive sport. And everybody has an advantage, based on who they are and how they play.
Yeah, so we have some players who I think would not have ever called themselves athletic before doing derby.
I think I'm one of them.
Okay.
I was like a theater kid. I never did sports.
And then we have players who got into it because they were into sports. And it's like, this is a sport that I can do. And I would say I came at it more like that.
Mm-hmm.
But you kind of all go out there, and it's funny how much you just forget any preconceived notions. We have all different jobs. Some people are moms. Some people, they come from all kind of different backgrounds. We live all over Humboldt County, and we all get out there, and it's just, you're just all on a team together. And you really appreciate each other and what everybody brings, because there's a ton of things that people bring to the track. One of our players used to play rugby.
Mm-hmm.
And
weightlift, like Olympic weightlifting. We're talking about Jess?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, well, I was thinking of the rugby because she will sit there and teach us how to hit better, and then somebody else, knows how to do something, and they always just bring it to the team. And because it's volunteer run and we're all kind of learning from each other, like our coaches are volunteers too. And so we're all just out there like figuring this out together.
It's very collaborative. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would be afraid if somebody said, hey, there's a former Olympic weightlifting rugby player on the other team and they're coming for you.
I mean, she's scary.
Yeah, that would cause me to pause.
She's scary. I mean, she's a great teammate. But
yeah, I'm sure you guys are glad she's on your team.
Oh, yeah, I love her.
Totally.
But she's a great teacher. Yeah,
Yeah,
she's taught me a lot about blocking. And we're very different, like, in our styles and everything. So
yeah, and you have to recognize that you're not going to be able to all do the same thing. And so that's a cool thing, is that when you go out there, you kind of watch people that you think you could do what they do, and then you try and do it, because you're not going to be able to skate like somebody who's just completely different from you physically. And so we all kind of develop our own styles. And often, like you'll say some move and you'll point to a player if you're trying to describe the move because they do it. And it's like their signature, and nobody else. And then you try and learn from each other. But often somebody will try something, somebody will get really good at something, and then you're like, okay, that's something we can try.
And then they turn around and teach it to the rest of the team.
Yeah.
That's a cool aspect.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of learning constantly happening from all levels.
Yeah, and it's not that old a sport. I think in its modern version, it's about 20 years old, maybe a little bit older than that. But in that time, all these people have had to figure out what the sport means. And the rules have changed a little bit, but really the gameplay has changed. Like figuring out how to really effectively stop people and figuring out, like, I think strategies came in only fairly recently.
Within the last 10 years, I think.
Like having plays where you actually say, okay, we're going to fake over here, and then people are going to all, rush from this side and pinch the other team. I mean, that's all pretty new. And so that idea of having like a set play is not something that was original to the game.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
I thought you guys would be going out there, okay, we're going to pass and we're not going to get past. This is our game
Yeah,
plan.
Totally.
Yeah, it's ever evolving. It's always evolving. It looks different even, I feel like, than when we started, 5 years ago, which is really exciting, I think. And to watch it grow, it sort of is this DIY movement. And suddenly, we have the best skaters in the world who are being sponsored by Red Bull and things like that. So it's cool to see it grow.
Yeah, the best teams in the world are from Portland and New York. Those are the two sort of, I'd say.
I think Victoria is.
Australia. Yeah, Victoria, Australia. So there's several great teams, and they're really fun to watch. Like if you just go on YouTube and you type in, I think,
Rose City Rollers.
Yeah, Rose City Rollers. Yeah. And a couple of our players recently went to skate with Rose City.
We're very proud. That's like the derby.
We are very proud.
They've made it.
Yeah, so I think HRD is a really, really good team, especially for how isolated we are. Like, it's hard to
rural.
get people to come here. But we have probably the best bout production of anywhere that I've ever seen. We have lights. We have a band.
Live band.
A live band.
Announcers, concessions, merch sales.
Oh, wow. You guys have a lot going on.
Beer.
That's a good selling. That's important to have.
Local beer.
Yeah. I mean, it's a whole event. And then, people come again and again. Most, a lot of people kind of come and check it out and just want to sort of party. But I would also say that as we grow in competitiveness, it also becomes like a lot more exciting to come and watch and see. Because before COVID, the team was ranked
84.
Somewhere in there.
Of like 400 teams in the world, which is really good
for
a tiny rural community.
It was one of the top ranked in terms of like for areas of our size. And so, they got so good. And then COVID kind of wiped it all out, and now we're rebuilding. But, it's that happens with volunteer-run organizations. You have to get people back on board. Our officials are all volunteers.
Mm-hmm. We are a nonprofit. We all have roles in running the league as well, whether it be, committee coordinators, things like that.
Well, Chowder runs PR.
I run PR.
And I run recruitment for new skaters. And so, we all have to do something to run the league. Mm-hmm. It's a big part of skating is not skating.
Yeah. We spend a lot of time doing not skating.
We have
doing the business stuff. Yeah, asking people for money.
Yeah. But a lot of that's pretty easy because people in the community really love Derby. So a lot of it, when we have to go fundraise, you don't have to sell it. People are pretty into it. Mm-hmm. They want to have posters up. They want to support the team. So it's not that big a sell,
Humboldt loves local sports.
Yeah.
Humboldt's pretty good about loving local, period, which
True.
is, I think, a unique thing.
I think that's why our bout production is so good.
Yeah, I would imagine. Especially just people wanting to come out just to support. Say, oh, you're Humboldt Roller Derby. Like, we'll come just support you for that. And then figure out what roller derby is along the way.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And the band is called the Dirty Derby Blowhards. Uh-huh. And actually, one of the band members recently joined Derby. And so she played in the band for, I think, several years. And then finally wanted to come and
join the team.
Be on the track.
Cool.
And so now she's on the track. I think that September 30th will be her first game ever.
Yeah.
So it's been really exciting. Like, I think that people kind of get pulled in. And a lot of people get burned out also. There's quite a turnover. Some of it is just that it takes a lot of time. I mean, we practice
3 days a week.
3 days a week, 2.5 hours each practice.
Plus your other responsibilities, league responsibilities. It can be quite a lot. We also do have people who have been skating for 10 plus years with Humboldt Roller Derby. So,
how long has Humboldt Roller Derby been a thing?
It was founded in 2007 by a local entrepreneur and badass Jen McMahon. And she owns Still and Primal Decor, those local businesses. And then it was officially chartered with Women's Flat Track Roller Derby Association in 2010. So, yeah, since 2007.
So not crazy old.
No.
Still fairly new.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Have you guys... We were talking about the COVID thing. Was it hard getting players to come back, or was it just hard getting fans to come back out to the stands?
It was hard getting our vet skaters to come back. A lot of folks had moved out of the area, which I think was really common during
I think
COVID.
A lot of people moved.
Yeah. And I think people, were just burnt out, as Clover was saying, from years and years of dedication, and we're just ready to take a back seat. So it was hard sort of recruiting again for the first time after 3 years.
Yeah, I'd say that recruiting for the training camps has been super easy because a lot of people, we had several years where we weren't able to recruit any new people, and you go out on the trails and stuff, and
everybody's
you see people roller skating. I think that happened during COVID. So people were excited to try and come as new skaters, but the veteran skaters, it was hard because you could see it, like there was so much effort put into this league. And you just knew, okay, coming back, it's like we've got to start it all over again. Mm-hmm. We've got to start going to meetings, going to practice, like it took us a year of just practicing and scrimmaging to get to the point where we could even schedule games. So, it's been a long road to get here.
Yeah, it was hard to, we weren't necessarily ready to host games because we didn't have enough competitive teammates, whereas we had a huge pool of training campers, but not enough folks to say, like, we're going to have 2 competitive games on this Saturday.
Yeah, it's hard getting the gears fired back up again when they've been stagnant for a while. Get people, okay, we're going to put in this amount of work again after taking X amount of time off.
Totally. And I think some of the folks who had played in, 2018, which was like Humboldt Roller Derby's peak of success, were wanting to come back to that level of competitive play. And like the rest of us weren't at that point yet. Whether because we were newer skaters who had just taken a bunch of time off, or there just weren't enough of us. So I can totally see why, it just didn't feel quite the same to come back to that.
Do you guys is this a rotation team, or do you have 5 solid team members, and then if somebody's sick, then you kind of pull from the pool?
So the actual roster of skaters is 15 skaters on each team.
For games.
For the game. So you have 15 skaters on each team. So that 5 on the track, they're constantly rotating.
Oh, I thought it was just 5 people the whole time.
I know, we should have told you that.
Yeah, they're 2-minute jams.
It's 2-minute jams.
Okay.
That's a maximum. The jammer actually can stop the lead jammer, whoever's in the front can actually stop the jam at any point. But yeah, it's maximum 2 minutes, and you're pretty exhausted. I mean, you feel like you just were fighting for 2 minutes, and then, you get a break. Mm-hmm. So usually in a game, there's at least 2 packs, 2 full packs, and 5 jammers, and then a couple extras for the packs. So yeah, you're rotating.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes it happens fast, though. Sometimes it's not even a full 2-minute jam.
Oh, so usually it's not a full 2-minute jam.
You're playing a lot.
The person, whichever jammer gets out front first, so gets past the other team first, is called the lead jammer. And the lead jammer can call off the jam because maybe they get out first, get around and get points, and they see the other jammer just got out and is about to go around and get points. They can call it off. And you call it off by hitting your hips, and whistle goes, and it's done. So you call it off to get so that the other team can't get points. But it does sometimes go for 2 minutes, and that's the longest 2 minutes of your life.
It's exhausting.
It is so tiring. And I once played in a game. Actually, it was recently. I went up to Southern Oregon, and we played in a game against Southern Oregon where it was super fun, but I think I had 3 2-minute jams. I've never had that before. And I was almost like angry with the bench coach who was telling me to keep going because, it's
a lot.
It's a lot, yeah. You get so tired. And I remember watching it the first time I watched Derby, and I was like, it seems like they're sitting a lot. They get a lot of breaks. And you just can't believe how tired you get in just a couple minutes. You could be out there for 30 seconds, and it feels like forever, and then you sit down, and then it seems like you're up, and you have to go out again.
Especially as the jammer, I think.
The jammers are the ones who are sort of trying to push that forward momentum, and so it is tiring. I feel like packs don't want to be jammers, whereas jammers sometimes become part of the pack kind of voluntarily. Like they'll say, we've had jammers come back and say, I don't want to jam, and they'll try and become part of the pack. But I do think that jammers, the easy part about being a jammer is you have one job. You're just going forward. Whereas packs, they actually have to know what's going on. So jammers are sort of just you're just going forward. It's
you just got the sole focus.
Yeah. Like you don't think.
How many people are in our league, though, in total?
Right now?
Yeah.
I would guess like 30.
Yeah.
5?
Maybe about 35 folks
and
that come to practice regularly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Not including, volunteers and officials and all that, just skaters. Right? 35? Does that sound right? That's probably a high estimate.
I'd say a high estimate.
Okay.
But before COVID, I would say there were more than 40.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And some of the 30 or 35 that we have now are new. And so, they're figuring out how to go out there, and the first couple scrimmages that you play are so confusing, and
They happen so fast around you.
yeah, it's like chaos. One of our skaters just had her first scrimmage, and it's a really fun experience, but you get penalties constantly. You don't know what you did.
Mm-hmm.
You're
People
just
are yelling at you.
Yeah, everybody's yelling at you. You don't know what's going on. It takes a few scrimmages to understand what's going on.
You got to get a couple games in.
Totally.
So when you do a full 2 minutes, what is there like a 30-second break there?
No.
Well, not in that 2 minutes.
No, after the 2 minutes. So say you do 2 minutes
then,
and then somebody calls a stop to the jam.
Oh yeah. So after the 2 minutes, you would go sit down on the bench because another jammer would go out. It's pretty rare that a jammer would go 2 in a row. So a jammer, you have like a rotation of people going in, and they're just constantly rotating.
I'm not sure what the timing is between jams, though. Like, usually it feels like the jam ends, you go sit down, the other team gets up, gets on the track, and then it begins. Like, I'm not sure if there's
kind
an
of
actual
happening
timing.
at the same time.
It is,
So the jam ends, and as the players get off the track, the next players are getting on the track, and you go again.
Mm-hmm.
You go again.
Yeah.
So it's not like there's a break, like somebody's calling a timeout, which is kind of what I was envisioning.
You can call, each team has a certain amount of timeouts they can call.
But that's not the point of ending the jam, is to
No.
get a timeout.
Oh,
You're
no.
just swapping out players.
Yeah, swapping out players.
No, you
Okay.
end the jam, and actually the next team should already be on the track before the last players are off.
Okay.
So they're always like kind of going on,
Mm-hmm.
and then as soon as they're set up, there's a whistle, and then a person yells out 5 seconds, and then a
start
whistle,
whistle
and it
goes.
starts. So, yeah, it's pretty quick.
Yeah, that's a pretty fast pace. How long do the matches normally last?
An hour.
Well, they're 2 30-minute halves with a halftime in between. Each 30-minute half often lasts longer than 30 minutes with timeouts and,
True.
official reviews and things like that. So games can go, up to 2 hours, I would say.
That's a pretty good amount of time. I can
Yeah.
see why you guys are practicing for 2.5 hours. It's starting to, the
Yeah.
pieces are starting to fall into place.
Yeah, and sometimes you have to play. So on September 30th, we're going to have to play in 2 games, most of us, because the first game is going to be an expo game. It's going to be
Us versus us.
us versus us. And then the second game is going to be against Shasta. So a visiting team is going to come and play. But so a lot of people are going to play in both, and we'll be very tired by the second one, I would say. But yeah, I mean, that is why you practice a lot, and we all kind of depend on each other to do other things outside of it. There's an expectation that you work out. A lot of us do weightlifting or HIIT workouts, something like that.
Mm-hmm. You're a cyclist.
I cycle, and a couple of us do stuff like that. And I think that, yeah, there's this expectation that your teammates are doing stuff outside of practice.
I would imagine you'd have to. I mean, if your cardio isn't in peak condition, you're going to be out there and it's going to be brutal.
Yeah.
Yeah, and weightlifting is a huge thing. I never did HIIT workouts or anything until I started doing derby, and it really has changed my life. Just these intense, doing burpees now is something where I'm like, yep, I don't think I love them, but I like them a lot more just because I see results.
Love-hate relationship.
Yeah. I don't think I was somebody who would talk about my workouts much before.
Now we're on a podcast talking about it.
Taking notes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why the expo? Is that just to kind of show, like...
We had another team lined up to play our A team, the Redwood Rollers, and something was lost in translation there, and they're not able to come up anymore. But we still want to fill that doubleheader, so we're gonna give you some more derby with us versus us.
Yeah, and they're gonna come in the spring. So the team we were going to play is going to come back in the spring.
Yeah.
And that's Santa Cruz.
Santa Cruz.
So yeah, they backed out, unfortunately, but there'll still be 2 good games.
Yeah, definitely. Shasta is a longtime rival of ours. They'll be playing Root Force, which is our competitive B team. Yeah, and then we've got another game in October on the 21st. And we've got 2 visiting teams lined up for that game as well. Another doubleheader.
Well, kudos to you guys for still filling the airtime for the first game.
Oh,
Yeah.
totally.
I'd be like, we're just gonna take 5. It'll be a nice little mixer. We'll have the live band out there.
No, we deliver on our promises.
Yeah. And we'll also be going up to I think we're going to the Dalles, Oregon for a doubleheader in November. So we're going to have our first like competitive away game in November. So we're getting back into the swing of it. And I believe in the spring we're going to have
a full
5
season.
games.
Yeah, I think we're going to have a full season next year.
Yeah.
So this is kind of just the ramp up right now.
Yeah.
Getting back in the swing of things.
Yeah, usually it's like five games
Yeah.
a season. Is that what we call it? Or is it's like 5 in the spring and 5 in the fall?
I think so.
Yeah, it's a lot of games.
And that's your guys' season?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay. Damn.
Yeah, it's a lot of derby, but it's great.
Yeah. I'm going to have to come out and catch a game because it sounds pretty... I would like to see it in person just to kind of try to put some of the pieces together. Be like,
Oh,
okay, how is this
definitely.
panning out? You said B team. Do you get it's A team and B team?
Yeah, we have the Redwood Rollers are our competitive A team, and then we have a competitive B team, Root Force, and there's a lot of interchange between the rosters often. Folks will play on both. We also have 2 home teams, the North Jetty Betties and the Widowmakers, and that is just us split up so we can scrimmage each other, basically. We get put on a home team once you've passed up.
And we're both Betties.
We're both Betties.
And right now, the reason we can't play Betties versus Widowmakers is because
We don't have enough
we
widows.
we don't have enough widows. So we're going to be playing black versus white. I mean, it's
Yeah.
basically is the teams. They're just going to try and split it up. And I think it's going to be emo versus emo versus glitter. Something like
some
that.
silly, so it'll be kind of a fun dress up,
Yeah.
Situation.
There is a history of doing playing games, expo games at RollerCon, which is this huge festival of roller skating in Las Vegas.
I went this year. It's great.
And you could talk to it. There's this history of doing scrimmages of kind of strippers versus
Chippendales,
tippers.
yeah, or something.
And, so there's a history of that. I don't think that we're quite that.
Yeah, no. Derby does have a humorous side too. That
Yeah.
It's got a good sense of humor. So unofficial games will be at RollerCon there was Average Joe's versus Global World Gym from Dodgeball. People like to dress up. It doesn't affect the game necessarily. I mean, people are still playing hard derby out there. We're just doing it with a costume on and full gear.
So it does have that WWE style that you were talking about.
Oh yeah. I mean, when you try and come up with a name, most people will try and have some sort of pun.
Yeah, we all have nicknames. Nobody really knows each other's real names.
Yeah, Chowder and Clover, you guys are throwing that around.
Well, my full name is Cloverkill.
Mm-hmm.
And
I'm Slam Chowder. Yeah.
Slam Chowder.
Yeah. And so we don't always know each other's names, actually. And sometimes people will say, oh, I know so-and-so on the derby team. And you're like, I don't know who that is. But you do. I mean, some of us know each other outside of derby. This is a small community. So a lot of us know each other in multiple ways. But a lot of us would never have met if it wasn't for derby. And that's what I really like about it is I've gotten to meet all these people that I definitely never would have known. And you get super close to them. And it doesn't really matter what else is going on in your life. You can appreciate this time that you spend together and that you're a part of this team and you're all trying to do something, together.
Yeah, I love it. I look forward to derby every day. It's great.
Well, that's what's beautiful about team sports is you get to build that camaraderie with each other. Even if you don't know who this other person is, where they come from, their background, what their job is, you're coming together to do this one thing for whatever amount of time, and then you go back to your other life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I appreciate you guys coming on and talk to me about this.
Yeah,
I
thanks
think
so much.
hopefully people will come out for the September 30th show some support, and that's at Redwood Acres.
Yeah.
For people that don't know.
Redwood
Always
Acres.
at Redwood Acres. People can come watch scrimmages too if they want to. I've known a couple people who came out to scrimmages to try and learn the game, and then they come to they become fans. Often it's because they know somebody who's playing, but definitely the games are a step up. They're more exciting. You can drink beer. You can, people around you are cheering, and it's loud. There is an announcer. There's also a DJ and a live band. So it's just noise on noise.
A lot of moving pieces.
Yeah. It's great. Great fun. 6 o'clock the game starts. Doors open at 5:30. The second game will follow when the first game is done. Doubleheader. You can get your tickets online at HumboldtRollerDerby.com or at Still or Wild Berries Marketplace. that's my full pitch. You can also buy them at the door, but they're more expensive.
So get them online.
Get them online.
Do you guys have anything you want to plug? Anything else? We just plugged
I think that was it.
Yeah,
We also have a
pretty
game
solid
on
plug.
October 21st is our next game on the books.
That's another home game?
Another
the
home
21st?
game.
Okay.
Yeah. Follow us on social media. We always are posting about our free public scrimmages, and we do fundraising events also around the community. I don't think we have any on the books right now, but like we poured beer at Oyster Fest, so it was fun to see everybody come out and say hi. Yeah.
Instagram, Facebook, all Humboldt
Roller Derby. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. We've got a boot camp. Another one will start in the spring.
Yeah, so if people are interested in skating, they can email recruitment@humboldtrollerderby.com and get all the information, or just look at our website. And training camps start basically every semester, so like August to December, January to May. And we welcome anybody who wants to come out and try. As long as you can stand up on your skates, we can try and teach you how to do the rest. Mm-hmm. And you do have to have knee pads, elbow pads, helmet, wrist guards. But other than that, whatever roller skates you have, it works. And, people have come out and, maybe they have kind of old gear, or we can loan them gear. Mm-hmm. Like it can be pretty low commitment at first, but I think that once you try it, you really get hooked.
I mean, you got to buy the nicest stuff.
And then you buy nice stuff.
Yeah, get some better gear.
Even if you don't plan on joining the team, it's just a great way to get exercise and meet people. And we also always need officials. And often our officials are on skates. We have skating officials. So we need people to do that too. So if you don't want to get hit, be an official.
You can still be a part of the team.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we have, because we are a nonprofit, we have a board. So like one of our board members now is going through the camp, and she just wanted to learn how to skate better. Some people... One of the most important things in skating is stopping, and I'm always shocked.
That's probably true. Yeah,
I'm always shocked.
That.
If you go to a skate rink, so many people don't know how to skate. They know how to go forward, and then they just run into a wall. And so one of the things we teach people, one of the very first things, is how do you stop?
And there's many ways to do it.
There's many ways to stop.
Actually, there's like 4 ways, right?
Sure. But yeah, that's a great skill.
Yeah, stopping would be pretty important. Otherwise, it's not going to be a graceful stop. I'm just picturing people at roller rinks, and
you just run into the wall.
People have some pretty gnarly wipeouts, or you run into somebody else and knock them down, and then that's your stopping method. Yeah, that's not what you want.
Or people who are outside. I think a lot of people have been trail skating. Learning how to skate just as to get around and enjoy the outdoors. And I think that a lot of them could come to L1 and just learn how to skate a little bit better, and they'll be more comfortable doing outdoor skating too.
Yeah.
And maybe branch into roller derby in the process.
You never know.
Yeah, if that happens,
we have a lot of crossovers, I think, now, especially after the pandemic. A lot of folks who do both. They're really different kinds of skating, though. Trail skating and park skating and derby skating.
Yeah.
A lot of different techniques.
What is trail skating? Like
just
actually
like outside.
on trail? Okay.
Yeah. Outside on paved concrete.
Okay, I was thinking, is there some skate that would be...
Yeah, it's usually like on the, like on the waterfront trail.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was thinking trails, like, we're going to go out towards...
Yeah.
They actually do make
Flores.
roller skates with wheels for trails now, but I think they're very exclusive, and I've never tried it.
And I feel like roller bladers might have better luck at that kind of thing. That is one thing about our sport is we skate on quad skates. And those skates are a little bit rougher when you're outdoors. Like, it's a little harder to skate outdoors, but they're a lot more nimble. For going laterally. Mm-hmm. So we all skate on quad skates. There's probably a rule against rollerblades too.
Yeah, I don't think that we do.
It's not allowed.
No rollerblades.
Is it just that mobility aspect that makes them more advantageous? Because you could get more speed on an inline blade, right?
Rollerblades are faster.
Yeah.
But
one of our, key blocking techniques is a plow stop, which is basically, you have your skates on and you're putting one skate out in sort of a pushing motion laterally forward, and you could not do that on rollerblades.
Imagine a snowplow and skiing. You're doing that.
Yeah, like
and so you can't really do that on inline skates, and on quad skates you're like very stable that way. Mm-hmm. So having multiple edges is a big advantage to having quad skates
and toe stops.
Yeah, the toe stops.
The main way we stop
is
with the toe stop.
We walk around on them too.
And you walk around on them. You can run around on them. And to stop on your toe stops, you just turn around really fast and put your toes down. If you can imagine, you have to turn around and toe stop. So that's another thing we teach you is how do you flip around real fast, so that you can put your toes down.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of technique in there. Yeah, I would not toe stop. I'd be like, okay, we're just going to come to a slow roll and then we're good. That would be my stopping
Just
method.
going to somersault out of it.
Yeah. Just sit down and slide and then come to a stop.
I mean, one of the first things they do in training camp is practicing how to fall, because you have knee pads on. So one of the ways you can stop legitimately is just drop your knee and slide on your knee. That'll slow you down. That's a legitimate stop.
You get really used to falling in roller derby.
Yeah.
It's like
I
second
would
nature.
imagine you have to. Yeah, you got to get comfortable with hitting the ground.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, well, hopefully people will check this out and go support you guys.
Yeah, thanks
Maybe
for having
sign up.
us.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I appreciate you guys coming on.
To you.
We plugged everything Humboldt Roller Derby, the website, HumboldtRollerDerby.com.
Yeah.
Perfect.